The wind swept through the empty streets of snowfall like a haunting melody, howling as it carried flurries of ice and snow that blinded anyone who dared to step outside. Snowfall, a quiet little town known for its picturesque winters, was now cloaked in a storm so fierce it felt as though the earth itself was angry. For Maggie, a golden retriever abandoned by her owners months ago, the storm was just another challenge in a world that had already been unkind. Maggie trudged forward, her paws sinking deep into the snow with every step. The icy wind bit at her nose and ears, and her once golden fur was now matted and coated with frost. Each breath she exhaled hung in the air for a moment before disappearing into the swirling storm. Hunger clawed at her stomach, but the cold was the true enemy tonight. Still, Maggie pushed on, her instincts urging her to find shelter before the storm claimed her completely. As she wandered the deserted streets, memories of her former life flickered like distant lights. She had once been a cherished companion, living in a warm home with a family she adored. But one day, that family had loaded their belongings into a car and driven away, leaving her behind as though she was no more than an afterthought. Maggie didn't understand why they had abandoned her, but the pain of that betrayal lingered in her heart like a wound that wouldn't heal. Yet, even in her loneliness, Maggie held on to a sliver of hope that somewhere out there, someone might care for her again. The storm grew fiercer, the wind whipping the snow into swirling walls of white. Maggie squinted through the blizzard, her ears perked despite the cold. That's when she heard it, a faint, high-pitched cry cutting through the howling wind. She froze, her heart pounding, as she tried to determine where the sound had come from. It wasn't the cry of another dog, nor was it the call of a bird. It was something smaller, weaker, and filled with desperation. Guided by the sound, Maggie pushed through the snowdrifts, her body trembling from both exhaustion and the biting cold. The cries grew louder, more insistent, leading her toward a cluster of bushes partially buried under the snow. Her nose, still sharp despite her weakened state, twitched as she sniffed the air. She detected the scent of something alive, a fragile, trembling life clinging to existence. With great effort, Maggie nosed her way through the snow-covered branches. Beneath the icy foliage, she found them. 3 tiny kittens, no older than a few weeks. They were huddled together, their small bodies shivering violently. Their fur, barely enough to protect them, was coated with frost, and their wide, fearful eyes reflected the harsh reality of their situation. They had been abandoned, left to die in the storm, just as Maggie had once been left to fend for herself. Maggie's heart ached as she looked at them. These tiny creatures were so vulnerable, so helpless. She recognized their fear and desperation because she had felt it herself. The connection was instant and profound, as though some invisible thread bound her to them. They were strangers, different species entirely, but Maggie didn't see them as anything other than lives that needed saving. She lowered her head, gently nuzzling the kittens to reassure them. Her warm breath seemed to stir a bit of life back into their trembling bodies, and one of them let out a faint mew. The sound spurred Maggie into action. Ignoring her own exhaustion and the cold that seeped into her very bones, she lay down beside them, curling her body around their tiny forms. Her thick fur became a barrier against the icy wind, and her body heat enveloped them like a protective cocoon. The kittens instinctively pressed closer to her, their tiny paws pawing weakly at her chest as they sought warmth. Maggie tucked them in tighter, using her nose to nudge them into a safer position. The snow continued to fall, piling onto her back, but she didn't move. She couldn't. Every instinct in her body told her to stay, to protect these fragile lives at all costs. Time seemed to stretch endlessly as the storm raged on. Maggie's body trembled, her strength waning with each passing moment. The cold was relentless, seeping into her muscles and sapping what little energy she had left. Her paws, buried in the snow, had long since gone numb, and her breath came in shallow, uneven bursts. But still, she refused to move. The lives pressed against her depended on her, and she wouldn't let them down. In the darkness of the storm, memories of her own abandonment surfaced again. She remembered the moment she realized her family wasn't coming back, the loneliness that had consumed her as she waited by the door of an empty house. Maggie had known despair, but she had also known love, and it was the memory of that love that fueled her now. She couldn't turn away from these kittens, not when she had the power to keep them alive. The kittens, warmed by Maggie's body, began to stir more actively. Their trembling lessened, and their soft mews grew louder, a sign that they were regaining strength. Maggie felt a flicker of relief at their progress, but her own body was nearing its limit. She pressed her head down, shielding the kittens as much as she could from the snow that continued to fall around them. As the night wore on, Maggie's breathing slowed, and her vision blurred. Her body was a fortress against the storm, but even the strongest walls eventually crumble. She closed her eyes, her thoughts drifting. She prayed silently, not for herself, but for the kittens. She prayed they would survive the night, and that someone would find them before it was too late. The storm showed no mercy, but Maggie's resolve remained unshaken. She had given everything she had to protect these small lives. As the first light of dawn began to pierce through the gray clouds, casting a pale glow over the snow-covered landscape, Maggie lay still, her body a shield against the cold. Beneath her, the kittens were alive, their soft breaths a testament to her courage and sacrifice. In the quiet stillness of the morning, Maggie had become more than a stray dog struggling to survive. She had become a protector, a savior, and a symbol of the unyielding power of love in the face of even the harshest odds. The night in snowfall dragged on, a relentless symphony of howling winds and swirling snow. The world seemed frozen in time, locked in the icy grip of the storm. For Maggie, the night was a battle not for her survival, but for the 3 tiny lives she had vowed to protect. Her body trembled violently, her muscles aching from the cold that seeped deep into her bones. She was utterly exhausted, but giving up was never an option. The kittens, nestled tightly against her chest, stirred faintly. Their soft, rhythmic breaths were the only sign of life in the bleak darkness. Maggie felt their fragile movements, a small reminder that her sacrifice was not in vain. She adjusted her position slightly, her body shielding them from the relentless wind. Snow continued to pile onto her back, forming a heavy, icy blanket that pressed her closer to the ground. Yet Maggie stayed still, her instincts screaming that these lives mattered more than her own. As the hours passed, Maggie's strength began to wane. Her once steady breaths grew shallow, and her heartbeat slowed. Every fiber of her being begged for rest, for the sweet relief of sleep. But each time her eyes threatened to close, she would feel the faint mew of one of the kittens, or the weak nudge of a tiny paw against her fur. It was enough to reignite her resolve, even as her body continued to fail her. Somewhere deep in Maggie's mind, memories of her former life flickered like fading embers. She remembered warm fires, soft beds, and the gentle touch of a hand stroking her fur. She remembered running through open fields with laughter echoing in the background. But those memories felt like they belonged to someone else, someone who no longer existed. The Maggie lying in the snow was a different dog, one shaped by abandonment, hardship, and now an unyielding will to save those who could not save themselves. The storm began to wane as dawn approached, the winds losing some of their ferocity. The first hints of light crept over the horizon, casting a pale glow over the snow-covered town. Snowfall lay in silence, its streets buried under thick drifts of white. The storm's fury had given way to an eerie calm, but for Maggie, the fight was far from over. On the outskirts of town, Anna Fletcher prepared to face another cold morning. At 42, Anna was no stranger to hardship. A widow for over 5 years, she lived alone in a small, modest house on the edge of Snowfall. Her days were spent working at the local clinic, where she cared for others, but her nights were filled with the haunting emptiness of a home that had once been full of love and laughter. Anna's husband, David, and their young daughter, Lily, had been the center of her world. But one fateful winter night, a car accident had taken them both from her, leaving her with a grief so profound it felt like a physical weight. Over the years, Anna had learned to carry that weight, to move forward even when it felt impossible. Yet the ache of their absence never truly left her. That morning, as she bundled up in her thick coat, scarf, and gloves, Anna couldn't shake the feeling that the day held something unusual. The storm had been particularly brutal, and she worried about the elderly residents of Snowfall who might need her help. Pulling on her boots, she stepped out into the cold, her breath forming small clouds in the frosty air. The snow crunched beneath her feet as she made her way down the quiet road. The town was still asleep, its buildings wrapped in a blanket of white. Anna's gaze drifted across the landscape, admiring the stark beauty of the morning. But her thoughts were interrupted when something unusual caught her eye near the edge of the road. At first, it looked like nothing more than a mound of snow, slightly misshapen and out of place. But, as she moved closer, Anna's heart skipped a beat. It wasn't just snow. It was a dog, lying motionless in the frost. Anna's pace quickened, her medical instincts kicking in. As she approached, she saw the dog's golden fur peeking through the layer of snow that had settled on its body. The sight was heartbreaking. The dog was still, its body curled protectively around something beneath it. Anna knelt down, brushing away the snow with trembling hands. What she uncovered took her breath away. Beneath the dog's body were 3 tiny kittens, huddled together, their small forms warmed by the dog's sacrifice. The kittens stirred slightly, letting out faint mews as the cold air touched them. Anna's eyes filled with tears as she took in the scene. The dog had used the last of its strength to protect these vulnerable creatures, shielding them from the storm at great personal cost. The sight stirred something deep within Anna. She reached out, her hand gently resting on the dog's side. The fur was cold and stiff, but as her fingers pressed lightly, she felt the faintest rise and fall. The dog was alive, but only barely. "You brave, beautiful soul," Anna whispered, her voice trembling. She could feel the tears streaming down her cheeks, but she didn't bother to wipe them away. Her heart ached for this dog, for the sacrifice it had made. And yet, amidst the sorrow, there was a flicker of something else. A connection. A shared understanding of loss and resilience. The scene before her brought back memories she had tried so hard to bury. She thought of David and Lily, of the night she lost them, and how she had felt like the world had turned its back on her. But here, in the snow, this dog had refused to turn its back on these kittens. It had chosen love and sacrifice, even when the world had given it every reason to give up. Anna knew she couldn't leave them there. She removed her scarf, carefully wrapping it around the kittens to keep them warm. Then, summoning all her strength, she bent down and scooped the dog into her arms. The weight of the animal, combined with the awkward bundle of kittens, made the task difficult. But Anna didn't falter. "You're coming with me," she said softly, her voice filled with determination. "All of you." The walk back to her house felt like an eternity. The snow was deep and the cold bit at her exposed skin, but Anna pressed on. The dog's body was limp in her arms, its breathing shallow, but the kittens began to stir, their faint cries urging Anna forward. When she finally reached her home, Anna pushed the door open with her shoulder, letting the warmth of the interior wash over her. She carefully placed the dog on a soft blanket by the fire, then set the kittens beside it. The warmth of the room began to work its magic, and the kittens snuggled closer to the dog's body. Anna knelt beside them, her hands trembling as she stroked the dog's fur. "You're safe now," she murmured, though she wasn't sure if she was saying it to the dog, the kittens, or herself. For the first time in years, her house didn't feel so empty. It was as if the presence of these small, fragile lives had breathed new warmth into her heart. As Anna watched the firelight dance across the room, she made a silent promise. She would do everything in her power to save this dog and its tiny wards. After all, they had already shown her the strength of love and sacrifice. It was a lesson she wouldn't soon forget. The fire crackled softly, casting a warm glow across Anna's living room as she tended to the fragile lives she had rescued. The kittens, now swaddled in layers of soft towels, had started to regain some strength. Their faint cries echoed through the room, a small yet hopeful sound that reminded Anna why she had braved the icy storm that morning. But her attention was fixed on Maggie, the golden hero who had risked everything to save them. Maggie lay motionless on the thick blanket Anna had spread by the fireplace. Her golden fur, though dulled by frost and dirt, shimmered faintly in the firelight. Her breathing was shallow and uneven, her chest barely rising and falling with each strained inhale. Anna knelt beside her, gently brushing her fingers through Maggie's fur in an effort to provide comfort. The dog didn't stir. "Stay with me," Anna whispered, her voice trembling. "You've come too far to give up now." The room was quiet, except for the occasional crackle of the fire and the soft mews of the kittens. Anna knew she had to act quickly. Maggie's condition was deteriorating, and while the warmth of the house had helped stabilize the kittens, it wasn't enough to save Maggie. The effects of the cold and her relentless sacrifice were too severe. Anna had seen animals in similar states during her time at the clinic, and she knew the signs of hypothermia and exhaustion all too well. Maggie needed professional care, and fast. Gathering her resolve, Anna wrapped Maggie in a thick blanket, carefully supporting the dog's limp body. The kittens, still too weak to move far, were placed in a small basket lined with towels. She made sure they were secure before grabbing her car keys and heading out into the cold once more. The storm had subsided, but the roads were still treacherous, buried under layers of snow and ice. The veterinary clinic was on the other side of town, and Anna prayed she could make it in time. The drive to the clinic felt like an eternity. Anna gripped the steering wheel tightly, her knuckles white as she navigated the slippery roads. Maggie lay in the passenger seat, her head resting on the blanket. Anna glanced at her every few seconds, her heart pounding with worry each time she noticed how still the dog remained. The kittens, nestled in the basket on the back seat, let out occasional cries, their voices growing stronger with each passing moment. It was a small comfort amidst the tension. When Anna finally pulled into the clinic's snowy parking lot, she wasted no time. She scooped Maggie into her arms and carried her inside, the basket of kittens tucked securely in the crook of her elbow. The clinic's receptionist, a young woman named Sarah, looked up in surprise as Anna burst through the door. "Anna, what's—" Sarah's eyes widened as she took in the scene. "Oh my God, bring them in quickly." Anna hurried into the treatment room, where Dr. Carter, the town's seasoned veterinarian, was already preparing. He was a tall, silver-haired man with a calm demeanor that had earned him the trust of the entire community. He took one look at Maggie and sprang into action. "She's hypothermic," Dr. Carter said, his voice steady but urgent. "Let's get her on the table. We'll need to warm her up gradually and check for frostbite or internal damage." Anna gently placed Maggie on the examination table, her heart clenching as she watched Dr. Carter work. He checked the dog's vitals, his brow furrowing as he noted her weak pulse and shallow breathing. A heating pad was placed under Maggie, and warm blankets were layered over her body. IV fluids were prepared to address her dehydration and exhaustion. "What about the kittens?" Anna asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Sarah had already taken the basket and was carefully examining the tiny creatures. "They're doing better than I expected," she said reassuringly. "They'll need warmth and nutrition, but they're stable for now." Anna nodded, her attention returning to Maggie. She reached out to stroke the dog's fur, her fingers trembling. "She saved them," Anna said softly. "She shielded them from the storm, even when it nearly killed her." Dr. Carter glanced at Anna, his expression a mix of admiration and determination. "She's a fighter," he said, "but we have to give her every chance we can. She's earned that." Hours passed, each one dragging like an eternity. Anna refused to leave Maggie's side, her heart breaking every time the dog let out a faint whimper or struggled to breathe. She spoke softly to Maggie, telling her stories of snowfall, of the kittens, of the life that still awaited her if she could pull through. The memories of her own losses weighed heavily on her, but they also gave her the strength to stay. "You're not alone, Maggie," Anna whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You don't have to fight this alone." Dr. Carter returned periodically to check on Maggie's progress. The IV fluids had helped stabilize her, but her condition remained critical. The damage from prolonged exposure to the cold was severe, and her body was struggling to recover. Despite the odds, Maggie clung to life, her breaths faint but steady. The kittens, now settled in a makeshift incubator, had begun to show signs of improvement. Their tiny cries grew stronger, and they nuzzled against the warm towels that surrounded them. Anna watched them with a bittersweet smile, knowing that their survival was only possible because of Maggie's sacrifice. As the first rays of dawn broke through the clinic windows, the room was bathed in a soft, golden light. Maggie's condition had stabilized slightly, but she was still far from out of danger. Anna sat beside her, her hand resting gently on the dog's head. Exhaustion weighed heavily on her, but she refused to close her eyes. "You're incredible, you know that," Anna murmured. "You've done so much. You've saved them. Now you just need to save yourself." Maggie's eyelids fluttered, and for a brief moment her eyes opened. They met Anna's gaze, and in that instant Anna felt an unspoken connection, a bond forged in the depths of shared pain and unwavering love. Tears welled up in Anna's eyes as she leaned closer. "You're not alone," she repeated, her voice breaking. "We'll get through this together." Dr. Carter entered the room, his expression softening as he saw Anna with Maggie. "She's a fighter," he said gently. "If anyone can pull through this, it's her." Anna nodded, her resolve firm. She would stay by Maggie's side for as long as it took. This dog had taught her the true meaning of sacrifice, of love that transcended species and circumstance. And now it was Anna's turn to fight. For Maggie, for the kittens, and for the hope that had been reignited in her heart. As the sun rose higher, painting the snowy landscape outside in hues of gold and pink, Anna whispered a silent prayer. For Maggie, for the kittens, and for the strength to keep fighting. Whatever the outcome, she knew one thing for certain. Maggie's courage had already changed her life forever. The quiet hum of the clinic's machines echoed in the stillness of the room. Maggie lay on the examination table, wrapped in soft blankets, her breaths shallow and uneven. Anna sat beside her, fingers gently stroking the dog's golden fur, her heart weighed down by the knowledge that Maggie's fight was nearing its end. Dr. Carter stood nearby, his calm demeanor tinged with quiet sorrow. "Anna," he said softly, his voice carrying a kindness that masked the gravity of the moment. "She's fought harder than any animal I've ever seen, but her body, it's simply too tired." Anna swallowed hard, her throat tightening. She had known this moment might come. She had seen the toll the storm had taken on Maggie's body, her trembling muscles, her labored breathing, the sheer exhaustion that no amount of warmth or care could undo. But knowing didn't make it any easier. "She saved them," Anna murmured, her voice trembling. Her gaze shifted to the basket nearby, where the 3 tiny kittens rested, their soft mews a testament to Maggie's sacrifice. She gave them a chance. Dr. Carter nodded, his expression one of profound respect. She did, and she knew what she was doing, that kind of love. It's rare, Anna. Anna turned her attention back to Maggie, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You're not just a dog," she whispered. "You're a hero." The room grew quieter as the hours passed. Maggie's breaths became slower, her body heavy with the weight of her final moments. Anna stayed by her side, her hand never leaving Maggie's fur. She spoke softly to her, her words a mix of gratitude and sorrow. her voice filled with love for the dog who had given so much. "You're not alone," Anna said gently. "You're surrounded by love. You're safe now." Maggie's eyes fluttered open for a brief moment, her gaze meeting Anna's. There was something in those golden brown eyes, an understanding, a silent farewell. It was as if Maggie knew that she had done all she could, that her purpose had been fulfilled. Anna leaned down, resting her forehead against Maggie's, her tears falling freely. "You can rest now," Anna whispered, her voice breaking. "You've done enough, sweet girl." With one final soft breath, Maggie's body stilled. The room seemed to hold its breath, the silence heavy and profound. Anna sat motionless for a moment, her hand still on Maggie's fur as the reality of the loss washed over her. The pain was sharp, a deep ache that seemed to pierce her very soul. But alongside the sorrow was a profound sense of gratitude. Maggie's life, though marked by hardship, had been one of immense love and sacrifice. She had given everything to protect those kittens, even at the cost of her own life. And, in doing so, she had left an indelible mark on Anna's heart. Word of Maggie's passing spread quickly through Snowfall. The story of the abandoned dog who had braved a brutal storm to save 3 helpless kittens touched the hearts of everyone who heard it. Neighbors, friends, and even strangers reached out to Anna, offering their condolences and sharing how deeply moved they were by Maggie's courage. The town came together to honor Maggie's memory, her story becoming a symbol of love and selflessness. A small gathering was held in the clearing near the clinic, where residents shared stories of their own pets and the bonds they shared with them. At the center of the gathering, a simple wooden marker was placed, engraved with the words, "Maggie, a true hero. She gave everything for love. Gone, but never forgotten." Anna stood by the marker, the kittens nestled in her arms, as she listened to the heartfelt words of those who had come to pay their respects. Though the pain of Maggie's loss was still raw, she felt a deep sense of connection with her community, united by the love and respect they all shared for the dog who had touched so many lives. In the quiet days that followed, Anna often found herself reflecting on Maggie's sacrifice. The house felt emptier without her presence, but the warmth she had brought into Anna's life lingered. Each time Anna heard the soft mews of the kittens, or saw their tiny forms snuggled together, she was reminded of Maggie's unwavering love. Maggie had left the world as a hero, her life a testament to the power of compassion and sacrifice. And though she was no longer there, her spirit lived on in the lives she had saved, and in the hearts of those who remembered her. The days following Maggie's passing were filled with a quiet heaviness that lingered in Anna's home. The small wooden house, once silent and lonely, now echoed with the soft mews and tiny footsteps of the 3 kittens Maggie had sacrificed so much to save. Each time Anna heard their cries, or saw their tiny bodies huddled together, she was reminded of Maggie's unwavering love and courage. The kittens had grown stronger under Anna's care. She had taken to feeding them with a small bottle, her hands steady despite the emotions that often welled up inside her. Each meal was a ritual, a moment of connection that soothed the ache of Maggie's absence. Anna couldn't help but feel that the dog's spirit was still present, watching over the kittens and guiding her through this new chapter. One evening, as Anna sat by the fire with the kittens curled up in her lap, she found herself contemplating their future. The thought of letting them go, of finding them new homes, felt unbearable. They were Maggie's legacy, a living reminder of her love and sacrifice. Anna realized that these kittens were more than just a responsibility. They were a gift, a chance to find new purpose and meaning in her life. The decision came naturally. Anna decided to keep the kittens, to honor Maggie by giving them the life the brave dog had fought so hard to protect. She named them Hope, Faith, and Grace, names that reflected the light they had brought into her life amidst the darkness of loss. Hope, the smallest of the three, had a soft black coat and piercing green eyes. She was timid but curious, often trailing behind Anna as she moved around the house. Faith, a gray tabby with delicate stripes, was the most adventurous, climbing onto furniture and exploring every corner of her new home. Grace, the creamy white kitten with faint orange patches, was gentle and affectionate, often snuggling against Anna's chest and purring softly. The names felt fitting, a tribute to Maggie and the qualities she had embodied. Hope reminded Anna that even in the darkest moments, there was always a glimmer of light. Faith symbolized the trust and resilience that had carried Maggie through her journey. And Grace represented the quiet beauty of love and sacrifice, the kind of selflessness that had defined Maggie's life. Caring for the kittens became a source of healing for Anna. Her days, once filled with loneliness and routine, now revolved around their needs. She found joy in the small moments, feeding them, playing with them, watching them grow stronger and more confident. The kittens brought life and energy into her home, filling the empty spaces with warmth and love. But more than that, they gave Anna a sense of purpose. For years, she had struggled to move forward after the loss of her husband and daughter, carrying the weight of grief like a heavy stone. Maggie's arrival and the kittens she had saved had lifted some of that burden. Through them, Anna found a reason to wake up each morning, a reason to keep going. One snowy afternoon, Anna sat by the window, watching the snowflakes drift gently to the ground. Hope, Faith, and Grace were playing nearby, chasing a ball of yarn across the floor. Their playful antics brought a smile to Anna's face, a rare and genuine expression of joy that had been absent for so long. She thought of Maggie, of the dog's final moments and the sacrifice she had made. Anna felt a pang of sorrow, but it was tempered by gratitude. Maggie had given her more than just the kittens. She had given Anna a second chance at life. That evening, Anna went to the small wooden marker she had placed in the clearing near the forest, where Maggie had been honored. The snow crunched softly under her boots as she knelt by the marker, her hands resting on the smooth wood. "I miss you, Maggie," Anna said softly, her breath visible in the cold air. "But I promise you this. I'll take care of them. I'll give them the life you wanted for them." The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it a sense of peace that settled over Anna. She felt as though Maggie's spirit was with her, a quiet reassurance that she was on the right path. Over the weeks, word of Anna's story spread throughout Snowfall. Neighbors stopped by to check on her, bringing small gifts for the kittens or simply offering kind words. Many were inspired by Maggie's bravery and Anna's dedication, and the tale became a symbol of love and resilience in the face of loss. One day, while chatting with her neighbor Edith, a retired schoolteacher, Anna was struck by an idea. "What if we could do more?" she asked. "What if Maggie's story could inspire people to help other animals in need?" Edith nodded thoughtfully. It's a beautiful idea, Anna. Maggie's sacrifice was extraordinary. It deserves to be remembered. Together, they began brainstorming ways to help the abandoned animals in Snowfall. Anna reached out to the local shelter, offering her time and resources to care for strays. She started small, fostering a few animals at a time, but the impact was immediate. The shelter began receiving more donations and adoptions as word spread about Anna's efforts. As the months passed, Anna's home became a haven not just for hope, faith, and grace, but for other animals in need. Each new arrival reminded her of Maggie, of the love and courage that had set her on this path. The kittens grew into healthy, playful cats, their bond with Anna unbreakable. They remained a constant source of comfort and joy, their presence a reminder of the life Maggie had saved. One quiet evening, as Anna sat by the fire with hope, faith, and grace curled up beside her, she reflected on how much her life had changed. The grief she had once carried so heavily had transformed into something else, something lighter, more hopeful. It hadn't disappeared, but it no longer consumed her. Instead, it had become a part of her story, a reminder of the love and resilience that had carried her through. Looking down at the kittens, Anna smiled. "Thank you, Maggie," she whispered, "for giving me them, for giving me hope." And as the fire crackled softly, filling the room with warmth, Anna felt a quiet sense of peace, a rebirth through grief, a second chance at life, all thanks to a dog who had shown her the true meaning of love and sacrifice. 4-0. The story of Maggie's selfless act began as a quiet ripple in the close-knit community of Snowfall, but soon grew into a powerful wave of compassion. Anna's neighbors were the first to hear about the brave dog who had sacrificed herself to save 3 tiny kittens. The tale spread quickly, whispered over morning coffee at the local diner, shared at church gatherings, and passed from one family to another. Maggie's name became a symbol of courage, love, and the profound connection between humans and animals. One snowy morning, Anna stood in her doorway, looking out at the pristine blanket of snow that covered the town. She had grown accustomed to visits from her neighbors in the weeks following Maggie's passing, but today felt different. A small group of townsfolk had gathered on her front porch, their arms full of blankets, pet food, and handwritten notes of support. Anna, Edith, her retired schoolteacher neighbor, began with a warm smile. "We've all been so moved by Maggie's story. We wanted to do something to honor her." Anna felt a lump rise in her throat as she looked at the group, their faces glowing with kindness. "I don't know what to say," she murmured, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you. Thank you all." Edith stepped forward and gently placed a hand on Anna's shoulder. "Maggie's story reminded us of the good we're capable of. She may be gone, but her legacy lives on, in those kittens, and in the way we choose to care for the animals in our community." Word of Maggie's bravery eventually reached beyond the town. A local journalist, hearing about the dog who had sacrificed herself for 3 helpless kittens, came to interview Anna. She was hesitant at first, unsure if she wanted to share such a personal story with the world. But as she thought about Maggie and the lessons she had left behind, Anna realized that sharing her story might inspire others to act with the same love and compassion. The article was published in the town's small newspaper under the headline, "The Hero of Snowfall, A Dog's Courage Transforms a Community." It detailed Maggie's journey, from her abandonment to her final act of sacrifice, and highlighted the bond she had formed with the kittens she saved. The story quickly spread to neighboring towns, and soon Anna began receiving letters and messages from people far and wide. At the Snowfall Animal Shelter, the impact of Maggie's story was immediate. Donations began pouring in. Bags of food, warm blankets, crates, and monetary contributions to support the care of stray animals. Families who had never considered adopting a pet before now found themselves walking through the shelter doors, eager to give a homeless animal a second chance. "I'd like to adopt a dog," one man said, holding his young daughter's hand as she clutched the newspaper article about Maggie. "My little girl wants to bring a Maggie of her own into our home." The shelter director, a kind-hearted woman named Joan, was overwhelmed by the outpouring of support. "I've been running this shelter for 15 years, she said to Anna one day, "and I've never seen anything like this. Maggie's story is changing lives, not just for the animals, but for the people who care for them." Inspired by the growing momentum, Anna decided to take things a step further. She worked with Edith and Joan to organize an event called Maggie's Day, a community-wide celebration dedicated to honoring animals and promoting adoption. Held at the local park, the event featured booths from the shelter, games for families, and even a small memorial corner where people could leave flowers or notes in honor of Maggie. On the day of the event, the park was filled with laughter and warmth, despite the cold winter air. Children ran around with balloons shaped like paw prints, while families gathered to meet the animals available for adoption. Hope, faith, and grace, now thriving under Anna's care, made a special appearance, their presence a living testament to Maggie's legacy. Anna stood by the memorial corner, watching as people left heartfelt notes. One card, written in a child's handwriting, caught her eye. "Thank you, Maggie, for showing us how to love." She held the card close to her heart, tears brimming in her eyes as she felt the weight of Maggie's impact. The love didn't stop at Snowfall's borders. Inspired by Maggie's story, neighboring towns began organizing their own events to support animal shelters. Social media posts featuring Maggie's story garnered thousands of likes and shares, spreading her message far beyond what Anna could have ever imagined. People from different states sent messages to Anna, thanking her for sharing the story and recounting how it had inspired them to adopt or donate to their local shelters. "Maggie taught us something important," one letter read, "that love and courage can come from the most unexpected places, and that even the smallest lives are worth fighting for." Back in Snowfall, Anna found herself busier than ever. Between caring for Hope, Faith, and Grace, volunteering at the shelter, and organizing community events, her days were full of purpose. Yet every evening, as she sat by the fire with the kittens curled up beside her, she made time to reflect on Maggie. The grief of losing her hadn't faded completely. It still lingered, like a shadow in the corners of her heart. But that shadow was now accompanied by light. The light of the kittens who had survived because of Maggie, the light of a community that had come together to do good, and the light of Maggie's love, which continued to shine in every act of kindness her story inspired. One evening, as she looked out at the snow-covered landscape, Anna whispered, "You did it, Maggie. You changed everything." The wind outside seemed to carry her words into the night, as if Maggie's spirit was still there, watching over the town she had saved in more ways than one. Snowfall was no longer just a place marked by harsh winters. It had become a haven of compassion, a town where love and kindness could thrive, all because of one dog's courageous act.